Hey folks, welcome back. So today I want to do another tackle talk for you. I want to show you guys how I tie my bug pattern. I love ice fishing, I love dock fishing, I love pan fishing. But when those traditional baits won't work when you're doing those things, such as spoon patterns or minnow patterns, tungstens with something else on it, it's a little too heavy. This pattern is just heavy enough to get you down there, but it's light enough that it will move in the water like an invertebrate will. You know, fish don't only eat bait fish. They eat all kinds of things. They'll eat any insect that's down there that can be nourishment for them. So I want to show you how to tie this bug pattern. Follow me. Let's talk tackle. Hey folks, let's get right into it. I want to show you some of the materials and tools that you're going to need here to tie up this bug pattern. I'll leave the link in the description below as usual, so that way you can pick this stuff up for yourself. What I'm starting with here are size 10 dry fly hooks, and I'm using these tungsten rainbow bead heads here. I'll leave, like I said, I'll leave the link in the description, but if you're looking for these, the size you're going to look for are 4mm or 5/32. Sometimes they'll go in a fraction. So if you pick them up at your local fly shop, they may not know what it is by the millimeter, but they'll know it by the fraction. So it's either 4mm or 5/32 on these beads. I'm going to use two different styles here. I'm going to show you that I tie. I am going to do a double bead pattern, and then I'm going to do a single bead pattern. Some tools that you're going to need is you're going to need to get yourself a fly tying vise, and I'll leave the link for a good kit. So if you don't have a vise, then the kit will come with some of these other tools that I'm going to talk about here. You're going to have to find a good pair of scissors, bobbin, and your materials. I'm using a waxed thread here, and I'm going to make them a purplish pink color, so I'm using a pink thread in this. You know, a bodkin, you see me use this in other videos. You're going to need some dubbing wax. Now this is the tube I've had for, geez, I don't even know, 10 years or more, probably maybe 15 years, but it goes a long way because you're not using a bunch of it. You'll need to get some head cement, of course, and also what you're going to need is to get some holographic dubbing. I picked this up at our old bait store we used to have around here, Grand River Tackle. Man, I missed that place. They had everything. Bruce, hope you're doing well. Love you, man. But I'll leave the link in the description. Like I said, we're going to make this little purple here today. I'll try to find a dispenser pack so that way you can have all these options of colors in here. If not, then I'll just leave you the single individual flash that you're going to need. Sometimes you'll need a set of hemos to grab onto your hook, depending on how you're going to do it. So I just like to have a pair of hemos handy. So let's set this stuff out of the way here. And those are the tools and materials that you're going to need to tie up this pattern. So with my single bead pattern, now when you get these beads, you'll notice that one side of this bead has a small hole in it, and the other side of this bead has a hole that's almost as big as the bead itself. Now when you're threading these onto your hook, I put it on with the small hole. Oh boy, these things are tiny. I thread it on with the small hole first, and then it just goes over, because I want to make sure that if you put the larger size hole over, it'll cover up your eyelet of your hook. Now I like it to stop right here because, of course, you know me, I don't want to compromise the eyelet of my hook for knots and stuff like that. But like I said, when I put my material on, I'm just going to put it on the shank of the hook, but I'm going to leave a little room for this thing to move because I want it to make a clicking noise under the water when you're jigging it. And vibrations and noise do help with baits. I mean, you guys know that already. Now with my double bead pattern here, I'm going to do the same thing. Small hole first on both of these beads, because I actually want this second bead here to sort of rest inside that big hole. Now this pattern I like a little bit more just because it's twice the weight, so it will get down there faster. But it will also, these beads clicking together will make more noise than the single bead pattern will. So let me set this on my vise here, and I'll slide this over. Now all we're going to do here is we're going to put this hook in our vise Now, if you're familiar with fly tying or using a vise for any purpose, then you already know the steps that you're going to need to take to put this in your vise. If you don't, depending on the vise, you just want to make sure that you are holding just right after the point on your hook on the bend here. You don't want to drop it so far into your hook that you don't have room to get your bobbin around with your thread. And your vise should be clamping this just tight enough so that way it will hold it and it won't tilt on you, it won't fall out or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pink thread here in my bobbin and I'm just going to lay this over top of the hook, over the shank of the hook, and then I'm just going to start wrapping it around, and then once you get it over top of this tag end, it will hang freely. But what I want to do is I'm going to snip off the tag end of my line there, and then I'm just going to put a good base of thread on to the shank of this hook. Now I like to stop this just about the bend so it gives it a slight turn down when you're putting your material on. But then I'm going to wrap it back up so I get a good base. Now you're pulling on this bobbin just enough to keep it tight, but you don't want to do it too tight because you'll break your thread off, then you'll have to start all over again. So just wrapping this thread to get a good base on here, and then I'm going to work my way back to the back. Now if you notice, I pull out a little bit of line here because our next step here is you're going to take your dubbing wax, which it's just wax. I mean, I just picked up dubbing wax because it was like $1. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to run this down your line. I'm just tapping it on there, and if you can, you'll notice that you're picking up a little bit of wax on that line. Now I'm using a wax thread already, but to put dubbing on, I prefer using a dubbing wax. Now you're going to take your dubbing here and you're just going to pinch off a little bit at a time, and then you're just going to touch your line. You see that dubbing wax helps to stick on there, so I'm just going to twist it. Let's see, I'll just twist it like this just to keep that dubbing on the line, and that's that. Now take off a little bit. Oh boy, that's too much. Take off just a little bit more and do the same thing. And I'm just twisting this dubbing onto my thread just so I can get the material I need on there to use. So seeing as how I pulled almost all of my dubbing out of the container there, set that off to the side. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap this kind of in an oval pattern here, because you don't want to get your material caught on the hook tip there, a hook point. And then I'm just wrapping this around just like I was the thread, but I'm paying close attention to watch the body here, because I want to make the body bulky, but I don't want to make it too bulky. And you want to make sure that when you're watching your material as you're moving up the shank of the hook, that you have enough and not too much material on your thread here, because if you look like you're having too much, you can pluck a little bit off here and then just give her another spin, another twist, and then you're just wrapping your material on here till you get all the way up here to this bead. Now, like I said earlier, is I want to leave a little space here. You can see how that bead moves, but I don't want that much space. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to add just a touch of dubbing wax on there, and not very much. I'm adding, there must be, yeah, maybe there's 10 strands or so of that dubbing in there. So I'm just going to put a little bit more on there because I just want it to be just at the right spot. Now you can see here, you see our bead still moves a little, and that's what I want, just that little clicking on there. So I'm going to pull some of my material back and then go to finish this. Now your kit will come with a whip finisher, and if you want to use that, that's fine. Whatever knot system you like to tie to finish off the head of your flies is fine. This is the system that I use. Couple fingers, pull some thread out, and just I'm tying almost an overhand knot by dropping my bobbin through there, and then I take it would actually be my index finger, and wrap it around the head of the jig, or the head of the jig, or the head of the fly, and then I turn it back over, and I put my scissors in that loop that I made, and I just pull it up nice and tight, give it a couple little tugs there, and then I trim it off as close as possible. Now you can see there that I have this bug pattern, and you can see these little hairs that are coming off from this dubbing. That's okay. I like to leave those on there. Sometimes I will give it a little trim so they're not so long, if you got some real wild ones going. But you can see there, I really like to have a little bit of this stuff hanging off because it looks like legs and it looks like gills, and you know, who knows what fish think that looks like. But I found that leaving a little bit hanging off is better than not. So what I'm going to do here now is to finish my knot that I tied. I'm going to take my head cement, and I'm going to get a little dab of head cement on there, and then I am just touching it where I tied that knot. Now your head cement will, it's liquid enough that it will soak into that thread, so you're not making this a hard body fly, you're actually making it a soft body. But you can see we put some on there, and the head of this is still moving around, and that's what I want. So we'll take and set this one off to the side, and then we'll work on our double bead pattern here. And the same system applies. You know, you're putting it in your vise just after the point of the hook, and then you're just going to back down some of your thread so it's workable here. And then the same system applies. Just start wrapping your thread around your hook so that way you can make a good base for it. And then just keep wrapping, just past the bend a little bit, and then all the way back up to the beads, and then all the way back down to the bottom. And then the same system here. We're going to put some dubbing wax on here. You don't want to use too much dubbing wax, because if you use too much, then it'll really make your material very sticky. So it won't have the little hairs on it that you're looking for. So now that we got some dubbing wax on there, I'm going to take a little bit of material here, a little bit of my flash dubbing, and I'm just going to wrap it again, just twisting it. You can go clockwise, counterclockwise, whatever you're comfortable with. I'm going to add just a little bit more here because it looks a little thin. Now you'll have to play with this a little here and figure out what works best for you and the type of bug pattern that you want to tie. So backing up my bobbin once again, and then we're doing the same thing. I'm just going to wrap this around in an oval pattern, like I said, because I don't want that point of the hook to catch my material. And then I'm just going to continue to wrap a body. And sometimes bulkier bodies work better than skinnier bodies, but we're just going to get this right up here. And you notice I'm running out of material here, so I want to make sure that those last couple wraps wind up next to these two beads here. And then that's it. And now you see you've got a little bit of movement here to where these beads can click together and click off the hook shank, so you're not completely stopping them tight against the eyelet of the hook. And then once again, for the finishing knot, I'm just turning this, spreading my fingers, getting some thread, an overhand knot, using the bottom loop to wrap around, putting my scissors in there, pulling it tight, and then snipping it off as close as possible. And that's why you want to have good scissors with a nice fine point on them, because it will help you to get as close as possible. Now this here, I'm going to trim this off because it's a little long for me. So I'm going to take my head cement once again, and I can take my scissors off. I like to wear my scissors whenever I'm tying just because it's easier. You don't have to stop to pick things up. So let me get my head cement here again. Another little drop on my bodkin. And I'm actually going to touch that thread, and that's going to be that. And that will finish off your bug pattern. So that's it. It's pretty simple and it's pretty effective for panfish. So let me know what you guys think about this video. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. If you guys do make these, I'd love to see some pictures in the comments of your catches with them or how they turned out for you. Now, you could buy this stuff in so many different colors. You can make so many different variations. I found the purple chartreuse works really well. I haven't steered too far away from that as of yet, just because these patterns work great. So, till next time, I hope you guys have tight lines, stay safe on the water, and we'll talk to you soon.